I don't care about a single character here. No, I don't care about Papa or my mom, right? Like, why would I? They have no build clear, it should exist, you know. I don't care if a single character dies in this game whatsoever. I didn't care if Gustave died, I didn't care if Sophie died, so I didn't feel anything at this scene. Nothing at all. There was no build-up for Gustave. There was barely any shit for Gustave. A mystery storyline has that added bonus of until they actually reveal the truth, you have all your interpretations and your tears and so forth, right? And immediately when a mystery actually shows the truth, most of them actually massively fails. This game is absolutely like that as well. I think straight up here, guys, into the whole video, it's a badly written game. It's straight up, right? Because they had a mystery going there, and they couldn't, make the mystery happen. They couldn't make the mystery be an actually well-written mystery, so they chickened out and went for a boring family drama. And then again, the family drama is also badly written, so it's just a bad writing game all over the place. Controversy if 33 is a good game or not, comes to the writing, right? Because of mostly the massive twist in Act 3, that becomes a family drama instead. But the truth is that it's a terrible family drama. That is the actual main issue. Don't get fooled. People saying that, oh, you don't like because it's depression and grief or whatever, blah. It's a badly written family drama. Why would I actually be sat here? I don't know this character. Right? They're taking the scene straight up from Saga Frontier 2, but I don't even know Gustave that much. Like, I barely know the characters. The biggest problem with this game is that I don't know who Gustave is. I play this character for a few hours, right? But there's no like dialogue in between, there's no building for characterization. I barely know him. I know he's gonna die in 1 year, and that his kind of girlfriend died because of the game, and I don't know much more about him. I actually didn't feel anything when he died. I felt nothing at all. Nothing. This to me gave me no emotion. It doesn't help. It was very predictable. It was very clear that Maelle was the real main character. Now, here I felt real sadness when the main character of Saga 2 died. This here still gives me the chills. This made me cry. Now, why do I care so much more about the original Gustave than the 33 Gustave? Because this Gustave, I was there when he was born. I grew up with him. I saw his life being ruined. I saw him being exiled. I saw him have to escape his father's hate. I saw him try to save his mother's life. I saw him indirectly killing his own mother, right, by his cursed bloodline. Overcome people's hatred for him, right. I had to befriend my brother, I had to see my nephew die, see my mother die and so on, and I eventually got to this scene where Gustave died. See, this is a game, right, where I spent 10, 20, maybe 30 hours, and then I got to a scene when the main character died, where Gustave died, right. Here I spent hours after hours, right, and then the main character died. In this game, right, I have really been there with the main character since he was born. I have seen him lose his mother, etc., and cared for him, right. I feel like I am the main character. And then having the main character suddenly dying, and also as a side note, it also was much better done, because you actually die in a fight against some random mobs. You're just overrun by random mobs, right? So you actually like, wait, these guys are actually gonna kill me? I have defeated like 10 different bosses, right? Here I am, and I'm getting owned by some random frog enemies. Like, what is this, right? It's a much better emotional journey. You have so much more stake on this character, and you care about him, right? And then you don't get killed by the most obvious like setup for a next act in storyline. This boss is too much set up as he is too strong for you right now. We all know he's going to defeat Gustave easily. We all know they have no chance, right? It's just ridiculous to even assume anything else. And like I said earlier, we also all know that Maelle is the real main character. I don't buy for a second people didn't see that she was the actual chosen one, with all the different, like, black and white flashbacks. Obviously, Alicia is her and so on. I mean, Jesus Christ, guys. I assumed that Gustave was gonna die after like 1 minute in the game. Even less they care about this character. I don't remember her name. I just met this character. I don't buy for a second people crying to this thing. Am I crazy? No, you guys are crazy. No, but all jokes aside, right? Why would we care about this here? This whole game to me, it is genuinely very superficial, with no substance. I just met Sophie. I have, again, no correlation to Gustave, right? I haven't played this character yet. I just, start playing the game, right? Here's this woman, she's gonna die. I know the game's premise, that they all die, you know, in the year thing. But I don't know who she is really. I just, again, met her. Why would I fear anything at this moment? I don't. Because I don't know this character. Yeah, I felt nothing when Sophie died here. Because I just met the character, right? It's nothing compared to the original Sophie. When your mother, Sophie, died in Saga Frontier 2. And yeah, I'm calling it out, guys. This game just ripped off this game so hard, man. Same main character, same name for your mother, the first female character that dies in the game. After all, perhaps I felt nothing when Gustave died, because it's the exact same ending as Act 1 in the other game, where Gustave died and Sophie died before that. Like, Jesus Christ. Like, seriously. Seriously. This game has taken so much from Square Enix that I immediately assumed that Gustave will die, right? Just like I did in Saga Frontier 2. And it doesn't help, I keep saying it here, literally, right? That the first female death scene in Saga 2 is when Sophie dies, just like in 33. This is crazy, man. They just ripped off everything. And they have two zanarkand playing, right, during the scenes. I mean, maybe just because this game to me, I'll make another video about it next week, I think, plan of, is that it is so ripping off everything for Square Enix. It really feels like if you really feel anything here, it was your first RPG you ever played, and you actually never played the classics before the thing, right? Now, that's kind of a bit of the characterization here that I really want to point out, right? That no, I don't feel anything when a character dies that I have zero build-up for. I don't really feel anything when a character dies but I haven't really understood the character, right? Where I just have a very basic premise. Now, this is the first issue, 33, but there are many more, of course, storyline issues. And again, I haven't even got into like the actual Act 3 terrible twist, right? But another issue there is, of course, when this female character dies. See, the reason I care about when Nozomi dies, right, in Last Tower Defense, a game that I'm playing currently, is because, honestly, this game has like 30 hours of dialogue before she dies, right? It's ridiculous. The game is as long as 33, it's just purely text, right? So when a character finally dies, you're like, actually, that's kind of sad, because, yeah, I spent a lot of time with this character, and just, get to know them, right? What they like, what they don't like, etc. When a character dies in this kind of game, right, you spend so much hour understanding who they are, what they're going for, right? It makes so much more sense. But actually, I think another reason this thing also feels more impactful is because it's my fault, right? When you're playing this game, you have decision making to make. Who should you save? Choose where to go in the storyline's path, right? Now, I'm not saying that every game needs to have this thing to be a good RPG or whatnot, right? But I'm just pointing it out that you have like a very long game, a lot of dialogues, whatever, right? Then you also have who should you save? This woman or that woman, right? And then they actually die, you obviously feel way more as well, right? When I'm playing 33, and it's the most like banal, very, very superficial gaming, the character dies, I have no backstory for him, he has the same name as the game, they already have died, so I figured out immediately, right? And I'm like, why would I care that much for? I really don't, right? But I think the real problem is, coming back to here, is the lack of real characterization, right? It isn't just about that if Gustave or whatever is real or not, it's that they aren't real regardless, because I have never really got to learn the characters. I keep saying that, but I want to hammer that point down. When I'm playing 33, the game has this really weird structure, right, of basically nothing really happens between the ending and start of an act. So what I'm talking about, right, is if you play 33, you don't really learn much about the character in this kind of scenes, right? You're running around, you're fighting in the game, you're shooting some enemies, right? But what actually happens in the characterization, in the storyline, in this thing? Yes, you do have the campfighting, but the campfighting is very, very limited, right? There's basically almost no dialogue there, no real understanding of the characters. You have to actually beat Act 1 to even get to really know relationship thing, right? With Verso. So again, why would I care about Gustave when he hasn't really like explored his emotions with any other character, right? Not that much. You have that he's kind of like Maelle's dad kind of thing, right? But again, that's not even explained. It's not even explored. His relationship with Sophie is barely explored either, right? Or they dated or something and now she died. Like, why would I care again, right? They have nothing of his childhood, his memories, or anything, right? So there's like no real character. So here you get the story bit, right? Because it's the end of Act 2. So now I was like, oh my god, that's my mom, whatever, which I obviously figured out, comment more to that later. So you have this like huge storyline spectrum, right? Very, very like, oh my god, this is a big, big, big thing. But at this kind of part, nothing much happens, right? You kind of have, oh, here's our next dungeon. It's like a few hours to get through this dungeon. But there's no real dialogue that's meaningful here. There's no characterization that's meaningful here, right? And that honestly is the whole game. Between the end of Act 1, Act 2, Act 3 and so on, right? Again, nothing much happens to the characters. And I think another issue called is the game, which also hurts its Act 3 part, right? But also early as well, is that there is no real cities. Yes, you have that one Gestalt village, okay, I know, and you have the little bit of the other one, but you don't really have much interaction with NPCs there. There's like one side quest to do, right? So in Act 3, you can't really go anywhere, right? You can't really talk to anyone. You have all this, I mean, obviously this boring dungeons, but I mean, it's not like actual characterization there. I know there's one quest per character, I know, but how much is that worth, right? Compared to other games, it has a much more living world, right? You have games with characterization, talking to other characters, NPCs, and how your characters, your party members, interacts with those NPCs. Here, for example, right, we have Shadowheart, very popular character, same voice, actor to 3, whatever, so forth, right? But in this game, look at this, we're interacting with the NPCs, right? She's being sassy, she's fighting them, whatever. They're interacting with these characters. They have different dialogues, right? They have to pick, and then we see different takes on that. If I think A or B, different reasons, right? Different actions to it. And how other character in your party feels about that, and how they are fighting with other characters. Another big problem with this game is that it doesn't really feel like the other characters have any kind of meaningful, say, dialogue or relationship between them. And people say, oh, but that scene when Sciel hugs Clair or something. Yes, I'm not saying that there isn't any scenes at all. They have a little bit, right? But if you look at the whole RPG game, how much interaction do you actually see between the other characters in your party member, you know, except the main character, right? Like you aren't there. How much do they seem to actually care about each other? Like I mentioned earlier, I'm playing 100 Defense now, right? It's a bunch of characters, and they fight and argue, and you have some relationship all the time, right? It's a much more livable game between the other characters. They feel like much more like actual people, right? They might hate each other, this sort of, right? This game here is so incredibly, I keep saying it, superficial. Because it basically is that, oh, she swam once, and he saved her, the hug about that, and that's it, right? That's much more an event. That is much more like a very, very clear, again, an acting. This thing happened, we felt the acting. There's a real relationship there. And the next thing, which is very, very clear in Act 3, even though it obviously issues Act 1 and 2 as well, is that the other characters, which are not Maelle, doesn't really matter, right? So you have Maelle and Gustave, I keep saying it, he was gonna die, so predictable, but whatever, he's not the real main character. They get Verso, which is partially a little bit main character, but obviously Maelle is the main character. And everyone else doesn't really matter, right? I have honestly, I haven't played that many RPGs where it has been so incredibly clear that no one else has any real like personality or, you know, an actual characterization like in this game. Of course, you have many other games. Let's say, for example, FF10. You have Tidus, right? Tidus and Yuna. But it doesn't mean that like Himari or Arrow and other characters doesn't have their own storyline. When I'm playing 33, I really dislike, and this is to me just straight up bad writing, just bad, you know, game design or whatever, right? How there is so little focus on your companions, right? If you play a classic Final Fantasy, Breath of Fire, whatever, Suikoden, even more so on, right? The other characters, they're not your main character, are going to have their own quest lines, right? Their own story bit and their own interaction and scenes with other characters. It's kind of like if you play D&D, right? If you play Dungeons and Dragons, a good dungeon master will have every player shine, right? You can't just have that like strong fighter character always finishing every boss fight and getting all the cool scenes. It's supposed to be that you have to kind of move it around. Oh, at this fight is the fighter, in the next dungeon is the wizard, right? And the different like storylines and how characters interact in D&D has to be, you know, rotated, right? You can't just have one character being the main character, like DM's favorite person kind of thing. That's a terrible experience playing D&D. Honestly, 33 feels like a really bad D&D experience where the dungeon master just really loves one character, Maelle mostly, right? This is like his girlfriend, you know? So yeah, playing 33 is like playing with the DM's girlfriend, and she just gets everything done. She gets all the cool scenes, all the cutscenes about her, all the storylines, and the other character gets like 5 minutes of cutscenes, right, at most, you know. This kind of idea. And this is an issue already in Act 1 and in Act 2, but it gets even worse, of course, in Act 3. Without even going into too much of the whole like controversy of are they real or not, is it a simulation or whatever, is the Matrix, just look at Act 3 from a story writing aspect, right? Lune, sciel, and so on, they have basically nothing. I know they get that one little extra mission with Lune, takes like 1 minute to do, but I mean, compare that to the other characters, right? It is like 1% of the storyline. It is just pathetic, honestly. I find it incredibly bad. Having a party game, right? And basically half the party has no story, or no characterization, or no real scenes. It's just weird. It feels lazy. It feels like it should be much more divided, right? And like I said earlier, compare that to the much better classic RPGs. This is like Chrono Trigger, right? The Chrono Trigger, every character gets a shine, right? Robo gets to work on that farm for 1000 years, whatever, right? Like every character gets their moments, right? Every character, Mario gets to say this thing and that thing, so forth, right? All the different characters has their different meaningful scenes, interactions, and I mean, basically any Final Fantasy game and so forth, right? It's like every character has their own story and their own journey, right? FF10, which a game has focused heavily on, copied a lot in the game. Kimari, supportive character, but you have that issue with him and his kin, right? Him and his family. He has a storyline about that, right? Some cuts about that, always about that, you know what I mean? Riku has all that stuff with the mech guy, and all bad guys, and for like every character has their own a little bit pocket storyline, right? They all have their own journey that they overcome, right? That doesn't like go away from Yuna, who has the main plot, right? She has to go and get the summoning and so forth. But that is how these RPGs are structured, right? You have the main storyline, which usually has like one or two main characters, right? Like they usually, of course, a woman and a man, usually like with some romance or whatever, right? But then again, the other characters has their own story as well that may or may not interact with like the main plotline. It's kind of like a typical sitcom where you have plot A and plot B, right? Plot A is the main story driving the story forward in the episode, and plot B is like, oh, this happens sideline. So for example, you watch a TV show like The Simpsons, right? Plot A might be that Homer is gonna join NASA, okay? He's gonna be an astronaut, right? That is the main plot. So the main focus of the episode is that plot of Homer becoming an astronaut. But then on the sideline, right, the B plot might be that, let's say Lisa is gonna, go be a musician again, or some instrument, right? There is less time on that. She's turning the clarinet something. But there's some storyline on that, right? Typical structure of a sitcom. This game doesn't do it, right? This game just has an A plot. There is never a B plot. It's so little B plot that why would I care about Lune? Why would I care about sciel, right? And this gets even worse. Now, of course, the game's massive twist is that nothing is real. And that's a very controversial storyline. Where should you burn the painting or whatnot, right? Is the canvas not real? Was actual people and so on? But even before we go into that, right? The actual storyline, if that's good or not, what's really, really bad is again with the main characters. I so massively hated how Lune, sciel and so on doesn't seem to care, right? Like why would I care about them then? They can burn, right? I don't care about them because they learn they're living in the Matrix, right? It's a simulation. They aren't real, you know what I mean? I think the best way to describe the three is a simulation, right? Like you are Maelle, she's Nero, she's stuck, in the tube and she actually is playing the video game, so to speak. And the other characters, like Lune, are just NPCs in this, fake world, right? And then Lune learns, of course, this is a fake world. She dies, right, for the gomage, and is revived by Maelle. And there's basically no story with that. It is so bad. There's no story that Lune learned she's in the Matrix. I mean, seriously, I think it's absolutely shit writing, frankly. It's terrible writing. These two characters, like Lune and sciel, and all the other characters in Lumiere, whatever, they learn they're living in the Matrix. It's all a simulation. We are not real. I'm just an agent in a game, right? They're learning that. While Maelle is an actual person outside playing the game. And it's basically almost zero dialogue about it. They don't even panic about it. There's like no reaction to it, right? Talk about it very slightly. In any kind of normal writing, you would probably have a few days of these two characters just going mentally insane, right? Like, oh shit, I'm not real or whatever. And I've seen some people defend this thing, saying that, oh, you don't know if God is real, this might be a simulation or whatever. That is not the same thing, okay? The defense of this game, saying that, oh, but this is how it actually would be in reality, because in reality, again, we can't know if we are real or not. Like this actual thing right now that we are living, you and I, could be the Matrix, right? We're stuck in the Matrix. But not the same thing, because we don't know, right? We don't know if this is real. these characters learn that it isn't real. Yeah, they literally learn factually that they're in the Matrix. That is a huge thing, right? It becomes that classic scene of the blue or red pill in the Matrix, where it's like, oh, I'm actually in the Matrix, yeah. We don't know that otherwise, right? But they know. They know they are not real. And they can't even take the blue or red pill. Because again, they are not stuck in the Matrix like Neo or whatever. They're actually just NPCs in the Matrix. They can't even decide to be real or not. And in that sense, to defend the storyline, I suppose you would maybe not care that much because you can't even leave it, so to speak. Maelle obviously can leave it, but they can't even leave the Matrix. So sure, there's some, argument, like how can you do there? But again, the game doesn't explore that, right? The game doesn't explore how this character feels by being stuck in the Matrix, by being an NPC in the Matrix, right? They're like, what am I, The game doesn't care about that. The game doesn't show them being emotional about that. So why, in God's name, would I care to not burn this canvas? Because these characters are like just bad simulation. They don't have a good simulation. They don't have good AI. These are like stupid AI, so don't care about their own life, It is so terrible writing. I think that's the big kicker in this game, right? That even without discussing the whole, like, oh, is it bad or good writing, the family drama, whatever, or blah, blah, blah mystery, the big issue is that all the characters, the actual characterization is terribly written. I don't care about these characters whatsoever. They're not real. And I don't mean that as in like, oh, they're an NPC or they're a simulation. I mean, no, they're not real because their action isn't real. No one would act like that. Oh, I'm in the Matrix or whatever. Like, no one would act like that. Like, I don't care about these characters because they're so badly written. And like I said earlier, right, because the characters are not really moving much between the end and the acts. Like I said, right, you start an act, it's a huge, like, massive storyline in cutscenes, and then it isn't very much actual storyline in between, like the big boss fight, like the end and beginning of the next boss fight. Why we care about them, right? There's not much there. And like I said earlier, with Gustave especially, because they don't even have the the relationship camp scenes right before that. So yeah, like why would I care? And again, I also mentioned earlier, but I want to hit the point here, right? You get into the different NPCs. You don't have any choices, and you have no real meaningful dialogue. And you don't really have your characters, saying stuff when you're talking to NPCs or whatever, because there are so few NPCs in the game, or so few quests or whatnot, so you don't really get to learn from that either. Like I mentioned earlier with, like, Baldur's Gate 3, right? And you have Karlek in your party, Shadhard and so forth. They will have different takes, right, on what you do. So you talk to an NPC, and you say, oh, I'm gonna, save this child, and then they get happy, or I'm gonna kill him, and blah, 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 so on. So that's not here either, right, It's very little banter, basically, so forth. But now, and again, this isn't all of it. Let's talk about the actual ending then. This is Another, an anime that I really liked until the final episode. I bring it up because I think it's a great example of a very common issue in mostly horror, but overall mystery games, anime, movies, right? And that is that when the mystery is revealed, it kind of sucks. You know what I mean? Lost, Another, etc. All of these shows has the same issue where it's just good until you actually understand the mystery. When it's all in the shadows and you know what's happening, then I actually care about the storyline. But as soon as the truth is revealed, right, I'm like, oh, that's it? Oh, that's just pretty lame. 33 has exactly that issue. When you learn the actual truth of 33, it becomes so much more less interesting, right? Because it's a very basic story. It's a very banal storyline too. Oh, it's a simulation, and they're actually painting outside. And it's very predictable. A massive issue is that it's incredibly predictable. I saw it coming 10 hours before I got at least, I don't know, Verso was the son of painter, so on. This stuff is so obvious. Maelle is, whatever, I'm going to get into it. But my point is that, regardless if it's predictable or not, when you finally learn the truth, right, that removes almost all the storyline. And some people are going to defend and say then, okay, but this, like, the family drama, the emotions, that's what really matters. No, it doesn't. You know why? Because I don't care about the characters. Keep back to it, right? That's a massive issue of this game, is that even if, let's say that I don't care about it being a mystery, I don't care about the truth of the game world, right? I don't care about the actual main lore plotline, that I actually do enjoy, like a family drama, right? But why would I enjoy this family drama? I don't care about Papa. I don't care about Mama. I have no backstory for them. I have no build-up for these characters. I have no emotional attachment to these characters, right? I barely have attachment to Maelle. doesn't help them. It's just two characters, right? And Verso I don't care about that much either. So I don't care about these characters. I really even less care about Lune and Sciel, so one has zero care about them, right? So going from a mystery storyline into like a family drama where none of the characters in that family has a good characterization, a good build-up, and actually good emotional attachment to the player, it's just a terrible decision, right? Because when you have a mystery drama, you don't need necessarily to have much focus on the characters, because it's the actual lore and mystery that keeps the storyline going forward, right? But what I'm in this situation here, oh no, it's just a very boring family drama. Oh, and people are defending, oh, but it's like depression and this thing and grief and so on. But I don't care about these characters, okay? The main issue is that I don't care about these characters. Even if I just say, okay, I like it, okay, I want it to be a family drama, I want it to be sadness, I want it to be grief, I want it to be focused on characters and not this like giant world thing, mystery, weird, whatever. I want family drama. I don't want this family drama because it's badly written. It's superficial. It's shallow. There's no much build-up for this character. I don't care if any of them dies. Why would I care that mom is like in the painting? Why would I care that dad is? I don't care about these characters because there's no build-up for them. As a painter, she was this mystery, evil goddess thing, right? But I don't care about her emotions. I don't know why Verso died. I don't know who the writers are. I can't even about Clair. She's the older sister on the sideline. I don't care about these characters. So you're going from a mystery that wasn't that written apparently then, and then going into a family drama where I don't care about a single character in that family. Of course, it's a bad storyline. It doesn't matter the actual controversy that is like, oh, it's not real or whatever. Doesn't actually matter. Like, it doesn't actually matter. The real issue is that as a family drama, it just sucks because not a single of the characters are interesting. Not a single character has any emotional attachment to. It's very superficial. There's no build up for it. And if Act 3 actually spent hours of building up this thing, you learn the truth in the end of Act 2 and into Act 3, and then you spent like 10 hours of actually understanding these characters, learning who they are, seeing all the backstories, then maybe I would care it. But the game doesn't do that. The game just ends immediately after Act 3. Yeah. If you don't do any of the side content, which is just boring dungeon fights, if you go to the Act 3 thing, it ends in like an hour, right? You know what I mean? It's like, wow, yeah, that I don't care. I don't care about Papa, I don't care about Ma. And also in that sense, of course, I burn the canvas because nothing is real. Lune, sciel has no emotions to being not alive, whatever, so they're not real. Just burn it all down, right? It's just a really boring characterization, really boring storyline. Because these characters are not good enough to be the focal point of the story. This storyline in this game is terrible. I think it's terrible both as a mystery and as a family drama. And that's the kicker, right? I don't care when Gustave died, because I don't know who he is. There's no build up for that. It didn't help, of course, that they ripped off Saga 2, both with him and his mother. So I was like, oh, yeah, he's gonna die, just like the organ Gustave did, okay. That didn't happen whatsoever. But the main issue, right, is it's very, very superficial. It's a very fluff piece. There's nothing really substance to it. Nothing behind it, right? People are crying because it looks pretty, but there's actually not much writing, much dialogue, much banter or whatnot between the characters, right? And what that leads to then, as I mentioned of course earlier, is that when you have this mystery drama that is revealed with a very boring, so to speak, very boring truth, which, like I said, is a very common issue, right, for like Lost or whatever, or TV shows and gaming and so on, when you get to that point. And then you get into a family drama where it's like, okay, but I don't care about the actual character in the family. That's just bad writing. It's not really about being like, oh, it should be a mystery. It should have been this existentialistic issue and what's life? Are we in the maze? That is not the issue. The issue is that the character in the family are completely boring. They're banal. I don't care about them. Right? Why would I care about them? The game doesn't deserve my emotions. The game doesn't make me care about these characters. It doesn't matter if it went from mystery to family, so to speak, because the family is just bad writing. That being said, though, predictability is a big issue, though. Even if we ignore that I was sure that Gustave would die immediately after playing the game, I guessed, right, that Verso was, like the son, that with the train thing and so forth, right? That the papa was the creator, that mom, his mother was the painters. All this stuff I figured out immediately. The world is a square thing, and talking about the canvas and the painting, I assumed that we were stuck in a painting very early in Act 2, right? I found the game very predictable, okay? I know a lot of people get triggered when you say that. Oh, how can you just lying with the game, whatever? No, I found the game very, very predictable. And I'm not saying that to brag, say, oh, I'm so smart or whatever. My point is that when you have a mystery, right? You have a mystery, and the viewer, the player in this case, then, right? The person, observing the mystery has their own theories. So you have a bunch of theories playing this game. Let's say I had 10 theories, right? The first theory I had was the correct theory. That is not a good mystery. If I can guess almost exactly what's going to happen, almost immediately, is that a good mystery? No, it's a terrible mystery. I don't want to be corrected. Right? I want to actually be entertained, but say, oh, that's how it is, right? For example, I mentioned the game earlier, I'm playing 100 Defense right now. That game, obviously, I managed to figure out who the traitor was, halfway through, so to speak. But it's a lot of stuff I don't get in that game, right? It's a much better mystery game. It's a lot of stuff that I'm used to, like, is that who it is or whatever? Yeah, like, it's a lot of stuff that I'm kind of having it figured out, but not really. So if you compare it, for example, then if I have 10 theories, it wasn't my first theory that was correct, it was my fourth theory. And that might sound like, who cares then? You actually figured it out. Well, it still matters, right? Because if I'm playing a game and I'm wondering, okay, like, who is the traitor in this game? And I have, like my top 10 the traitors, right? If the first one that I assume is going to be a traitor is a traitor, I would say that's bad writing. You're supposed to trick the player a bit, right? You're supposed to have a mystery about it, you know what I mean? You're supposed to not be able to figure it out that easily. On the same time, if it's attempt, so to speak, in this list of likely traitors, then it's also bad writing, right? Because then it just kind of comes from the left, whatever, like just from the left field. Like, what, she's a traitor? That also would be bad writing, or it just comes out of nowhere, right? So if you have 10 characters, you have to guess who is the traitor. If it's the guy you are assuming is the least likely traitor, is the traitor, yeah, I was just bad writing, because, again, it doesn't make much sense if you're right. But if it's the most likely one, it usually is bad as well, right? Because it's kind of like, oh, it's too obvious, it's too predictable, it's not that fun. So I think the 100, for example, is a good game because of the mystery, because they manage to be somewhat predictable, but not too predictable, somewhat mysterious, but not too incredible mystery, right? I would say. This game here instead, my point, of course, is the first choice, right? You have, who's the traitor? Oh, it was the guy I assumed from 10 hours ago. Yeah, it's the first thing. The painter is mom? Yeah, I know that, right? And I think that another issue that I felt in Act 2 already, Act 3, of course, it's a terrible part of this game. But even in Act 2, this game, right, I was not impressed at all, because it felt like a slog, right? On storyline, because they kept giving me this, foreshadowing, these like hints to the truth of the game world, and I keep saying here, assume the correct truth, right? Just after like a few hours in Act 2, or even less than that, and then I keep having these hints, thrown at me, which are just enforcing my already existing belief. So I'm just like, yeah, whatever, let's just get to the twist then, because I know it, okay? Like, you don't have to tell me that, oh, mom and me play with the train. Yes, obviously your mom's painting. Let's get to the painters, you know what I mean? So that to me is also just bad writing. It's not much there, right? Because back to what I said earlier, when you're playing the game and not much happens with the characters between, again, the ending and the start of different acts. Same thing in every act. Not much happened, as I keep saying with Gustave, right? From where Sophie dies, you take Saga 2, Sophie dies, and then you have, like the end of the act. Nothing much happens in between with that character. If you compare that to the game they copied, Saga 2, then mom dies, Sophie in that game, right? You have other stuff, right? You have your brother trying to kill you. You have your nephew dying. You have your brother becoming a monster and then saving you later as a dragon monster thing. So forth. You have your best friend and his children, and you have that, and then you die with that character, right? There's a lot of story elements happening in Saga 2 from when Sophie died until you die, right? It's like 20 other arcs in between there, right? In this game here, it really is that. Sophie dies, you kind of go through the world, you meet the Gustaves or whatever, a little bit like that. But mostly it's about Maelle, right? Maelle is in this museum or something, the creator. She's like, oh, what is happening? This mansion or something. And she has all the storyline. Gustave doesn't have much storyline at all between when Sophie died and he dies. What actually happened between that? Nothing much, right? again, that's why the character doesn't make any sense. It's just bad writing. So you're not with a game where you're kind of like, oh, I guess he died. I don't care about it. And the same thing goes, across all the acts, right? But on the same time, like I mentioned, it also makes it predictable. Because the game just keeps enforcing the exact same idea that it gave you in the beginning of the act, right? So in the beginning of Act 2, it tells you this thing, I see the painted mom, whatever. And then it keeps just telling you that over and over again, and nothing new really is added. So you feel like, you're just throwing the same shit on me over and over again, and it's just getting boring. Just tell me the twist. Yeah, I already know what's going to happen, okay? You just keep telling me immediately. Don't drag it out too much, right? It feels like almost like a lazy writing, when, again, nothing really is in between these different major plot points, right? And it also kind of explains how Act 3 is so weird too, where, Act 3 is like, okay, start, bam, let's boss next to you, and it's over. Yeah, it feels like they just didn't care about it at all. And then you have, of course, obviously, the terrible game mechanics of Act 3, which I made another video about, doesn't help. I think Act 3 in this game is a tremendous disservice to the game, right? In so many ways, both in the storyline and in a game mechanic-wise, right? Because this game, let's be honest here, is carried by the graphics, partially the music, which is mostly from, I would say, the story from that, and the game mechanics, parry and dodging, when it was linear and it was balanced, right, to some extent in Act 1, and partially Act 2. Act 3 is just a mess in every regard, in my opinion, and if I would review the game, and I'm making another video on the actual contextual of the game, but if I review the game, I would say that, like Act 1 and 2 is like maybe a 7, maybe an 8 in a good day, but Act 3 is like a 3 or a 2 or something. It's really boring, superficial. The game mechanics don't work anymore, right? And then the storyline also is like, oh my god. And lastly, I'll put out this thing, that Gustave isn't revived in Act 3 is just stupid. And then people say, but like the Lacrima or the Thunderbolts or whatever. No one cares, okay? No one cares about the stupid ruling of the painting. It doesn't make any sense anyway. The issue is that if you at least had Gustave coming back in the beginning of Act 3, you would actually maybe have that whole, am I alive or not? Am I an NPC or not? Having him rejoin the party would have made so much more sense. It could have solved so much of the actual mechanical issues too, because you could have a 3 party, right? So you have 3 guys, no 3 guys, instead of having the 3-2 thing. Obviously you should be able to swap character in the battle for that man, I digress. But just having him join you would have given you not only a better game mechanics, but also it's like, wow, he could have a lot of that actual storyline. His interaction, right, with Lune and so on, could make much more sense. They talk about, are we alive again? I saw you died, and then I died, and oh my god, are we used NPCs? Are we in the Matrix, right? He would be a great catalyst for having a lot of these discussions in the game about what it means to actually be in the painting and all, in the canvas. And then when you have to burn down the world, right, or should I burn it down now or not, that also make much more, emotional effort to that. I'm playing with Gustave, he's been there with me, we've done all the side content in Act 3, if I burn it down, he dies permanently, kind of. Is he alive? I don't know. That would make much more sense. I think it's a terrible, terrible mistake not reviving Gustave in the beginning of Act 3, because it would add so much to the storyline and to the potential banter and discussion between the characters. But anyway, guys, this video, like, subscribe, and have a great day.